Can you imagine? Can you imagine being circled and having Brown Girl in the Ring sung at you on your Butlins holiday when you were 3? Can you imagine being called Blackie and Darkie or Wog and Half-caste when you're just working out who you are in primary school? Can you imagine absolutely loving history lessons at school, but never seeing anyone that looked like you in school books apart from the downtrodden and enslaved? Can you imagine not knowing about the great things your culture has done, the origins of home security systems, refrigeration vans and three-way traffic lights, to mention but a few? Can you imagine always pausing before voicing opinions for fear of being labelled the typical aggressive rather than the assertive that as a female in society you absolutely need to be? Can you imagine being encouraged to straighten your hair and lighten your skin, because we all know the straighter, the lighter equals the easier the unconscious racist will be? Can you imagine first holidays abroad and being known only as the Black? Wonder which attribute I'd be called by if I didn't have brown skin. Can you imagine finding a non-BAME guy you like, only to then find out that the penchant for brown skin is the reason they like you? What about what's underneath? Can you imagine having doors slammed in your face when shopping in Hatton Garden for your engagement ring? Can you imagine being on holiday where they should probably just queue up for all the requests to touch your baby's afro hair? Can you imagine explaining to your child that they will face prejudices throughout their life at aged 8? Can you imagine your child being told to go back to their country on a first day at camping when all is meant to be carefree? Can you imagine being out of London and feeling everyone staring at you because you have brown skin? Can you imagine being in London and told on the tube that your fellow passenger doesn't have to listen to the likes of you? Can you imagine noticing in all the events and meetings that hardly anyone looks like you do? Can you imagine seeing the increase of culture vultures who generate success from your look, sound and stance, but want nothing to do with you? Can you imagine watching marketing and advertising sample your everyday selves to sell their wares because it's hip and cool? Can you imagine labouring over where to holiday? You know you have to face it everywhere. Where's the best of a bad bunch? Can you imagine several black taxis not stopping for you in a row, even though they all had lights on? Can you imagine your child being called the N-word and you being able to do not one thing? Can you imagine a coachload of teenagers football chanting the word blackie at you, as if you're not quite aware of the colour of your own skin? Can you imagine reading released historical docs where it's made clear that immigration acts were never meant to include your ethnicity? Can you imagine walking through your hometown and knowing the architecture you adore was built on the blood, sweat and tears of your ancestors from yesteryear? Can you imagine being reminded of the fact by all the many statues and tributes celebrating what the enslavers did? Can you imagine knowing that counterparts have built communities of wealth and success over the decades, only to have it all destroyed? You will stay down is the message that leaves. And can you imagine having to accept it all, generation upon generation, week out, week in?